When an NFL player wins the MVP award, it highlights their elite dominance on the field throughout the regular season, being a team leader through thick and thin, and guarantees their name in the NFL history books. The league's MVP is also associated with success, as the league MVP leads their team to the playoffs, a Super Bowl appearance, and a Super Bowl win. Not to mention guys staying consistent and winning multiple MVP awards. However, some guys who have won the league's most prestigious regular season award fail to dominate in the season after winning the MVP. These guys see a steep decline in production, suffer an injury during regular season play, or maybe just a little bit of regression due to a turnover in their supporting cast. Here at TPS, we're going to look at 10 former league MVPs who flopped a year after winning the illustrious award, and do our best to try to explain why they flopped. Shaun Alexander. Alexander was a wrecking ball of a running back during his tenure with the Seattle Seahawks, as he made 3 Pro Bowls with the team and helped them reach Super Bowl 40. However, his 2005 season is considered his best season in the NFL, as he rushed for 1,880 yards on 370 carries and scored 27 touchdowns, which both led the league that year. Because of that, Alexander earned the NFL Offensive Player of the Year award and the renowned AP NFL MVP award for his production. When 2006 rolled around, Alexander suffered a foot injury in Week 3 against the New York Giants and missed some time, even though he just signed an 8-year, $62 million extension with $15 million being guaranteed. Alexander rushed for 896 yards on 252 carries and scored 7 touchdowns that season. It also didn't help Alexander's case that offensive guard Steve Hutchinson signed a 7-year, $49 million deal with the Minnesota Vikings, which really weakened the Seahawks' offensive line. Alexander's production continued to decline in 2007, and during his brief stint with Washington in 2008, things did not get any better, and so he hung up his cleats in November of that year. Terrell Davis. Davis was on top of his game with the Broncos in the 1990s as he helped the team win back-to-back Super Bowls. In 1998, the world was Davis's oyster as he led the league in rushing yards with 2,008 yards on 392 attempts and scored 21 touchdowns. Not to mention, Davis also won the 1998 NFL Offensive Player of the Year award for his contributions on offense. When the 1999 season kicked off, Davis was plagued with numerous injuries, including a torn ACL and MCL that he sustained in a Week 4 matchup against the New York Jets. The Broncos would finish the 1999 season with a 6-10 record and in last place in the AFC West, as their offense struggled without Davis on the field. Meanwhile, Davis rushed for 211 yards on 67 attempts and scored just 2 touchdowns. In 2000, Davis played in 5 games, as he was sidelined with a stress reaction injury in his lower leg. In 2001, Davis played in 8 games due to arthroscopic surgery on both knees, and would go on to retire in 2002. Rich Gannon. Gannon's time in the NFL is one of the more interesting careers, as he was a late bloomer in the league after years of being a backup and bouncing around the league. When Gannon signed with the then Oakland Raiders, everything changed as he began winning games and playing great football in the later part of his career. Not to mention, he led the Raiders to the playoffs 3 times. In 2002, Gannon was on a whole nother level, completing 418 passes for 4,689 yards, both league-leading totals that season, and throwing 26 touchdowns against 10 interceptions. Gannon also led the Raiders to Super Bowl 37, where they ultimately got crushed by Jon Gruden's Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Unfortunately, Gannon's streak of success was snapped in the 2003 season, as he sustained a gruesome shoulder injury that ended his season in a Week 7 game against the Kansas City Chiefs. Gannon also had a 2-5 record as a starter and completed 125 passes for 1,274 yards and threw 6 touchdowns against 4 interceptions. Gannon would play in 3 games in 2004, but suffered a fractured vertebrae in his neck. He retired in August of 2005 and immediately became a broadcast analyst for CBS. Kurt Warner. Warner's career in the NFL is considered one of the greatest Cinderella stories of all time, as he went from stocking grocery store shelves to winning the league MVP in 1999, and guiding the then St. Louis Rams to win Super Bowl 34, 23-16. During Warner's historic 1999 season, he completed 325 passes for 4,353 yards and threw a league-high 41 touchdowns against 13 interceptions. In 2000, Warner's season was interrupted with a broken pinky finger in his throwing hand, resulting in him playing just 11 games, as he went 8-3 as a starter, completing 235 passes for 3,429 yards, as well throwing 21 touchdowns against 18 interceptions. Warner would win his second MVP award in 2001, going 14-2 as a starter, completing 375 passes for 4,830 yards, which was a league high, and throwing a league high 36 touchdowns against 22 interceptions. He led the Rams to Super Bowl 36, but they lost to Tom Brady and the upcoming New England Patriots 20-17. Then, in 2002, Warner struggled, going 0-6 as a starter, completing 144 passes for 1,431 yards, throwing 3 touchdowns against 11 interceptions. The Rams would finish that year with a 7-9 record and missing out on the playoffs. Warner broke a finger in his throwing hand, resulting in the team turning their attention to Mark Bulger as the starting quarterback, and leading to Warner's eventual release from the team. Warner would play one season for the New York Giants, but would actually find his footing with the Arizona Cardinals from 2005 to 2009, leading them to Super Bowl 43, where they lost to the Pittsburgh Steelers 27-23. Brett Favre. Favre was on top of the world in the 1990s as he won 3 straight MVP awards, guided the Packers to a dominant Super Bowl 31 victory over the New England Patriots, and was the premier quarterback of the decade. During the 1997 season, Favre led the Packers to a 13-3 record, completed 304 passes for 3,867 yards, and threw a league-high 35 touchdowns against 16 interceptions. Favre also led the Packers to Super Bowl 32, but they lost to John Elway's Denver Broncos 31-24. In the 1998 season, Favre didn't play badly, as he completed 347 passes on 4,212 yards, but his touchdown passes dropped from 35 to 31, and his interceptions increased from 16 to 23. The Packers finished the season with an 11-5 record, but were knocked out of the playoffs in the wildcard round in a controversial game against the San Francisco 49ers. It also didn't help Favre that head coach Mike Holmgren would resign from the Packers and become the Seattle Seahawks head coach in the 1999 season. Favre would still dominate with the Packers, but he was never able to return to the Super Bowl again. Cam Newton. Newton's 2015 season was a sight to see. He led the Panthers to a 15-1 record, completed 296 passes for 3,837 yards, threw a career-high 35 touchdowns against 10 interceptions, rushed for 636 yards on 132 attempts, and scored 10 rushing touchdowns, earning him the league MVP that season. Newton would lead the Panthers to Super Bowl 50, but he and the team struggled against the Denver Broncos and their formidable defense in a 24-10 loss. When the 2016 season began, people thought that Newton and the Panthers would maybe rebound from that Super Bowl loss. But, Newton and the Panthers really struggled that year. Newton would complete 270 passes for 3,509 yards and threw 19 touchdowns against 14 interceptions. Newton suffered a concussion during a 2-point conversion attempt in a Week 4 game against the Atlanta Falcons, forcing him to miss some time. And he also dealt with a partially torn rotator cuff in his shoulder during a Week 14 game against the then San Diego Chargers, which would alter his career later on. Newton's career would go downhill as he only made the playoffs once in 2017, had a 1-year stint with the New England Patriots in 2020, and was out of the league altogether after the 2021 season. Brian Sipe. Sipe's NFL career was incredible to witness, as he went from a late-round draft pick to becoming a starter and resilient leader for the Cleveland Browns. His best season in the league was in 1980, when he completed 337 passes for 4,132 yards and threw 30 touchdowns against 14 interceptions, as he led the Browns to an 11-5 record and a playoff appearance, where they would lose to the eventual Super Bowl 15 champion Oakland Raiders in the divisional round. As a result, Sipe won the 1980 NFL MVP award for his work on the field, and earned his only Pro Bowl nod as well. When the 1981 season rolled around, fans thought Sipe was going to continue dominating. Unfortunately, Sipe really struggled that season, completing just 313 passes for 3,876 yards and throwing 17 touchdowns against a league-high 25 interceptions. The Browns would also miss the playoffs that year with an abysmal 5-11 record. Sipe's career just would never be the same, as he flamed out with the Browns and had a brief stint with the New Jersey Generals and Jacksonville Bulls of the USFL in 1984 and 1985 respectively. Boomer Esiason. Esiason's 1988 season was a masterclass to watch, as he was dominant on offense, completing 223 passes for 3,572 yards and throwing a career-high 28 touchdowns against 14 interceptions. Esiason also led the Cincinnati Bengals to a 12-4 record and a Super Bowl 23 appearance, where they would ultimately fall to Joe Montana and the San Francisco 49ers 20-16. When the 1989 season rolled around, Esiason played fairly well, as he did in 1988, completing 258 passes for 3,525 yards and throwing 28 touchdowns against 11 interceptions. However, he went 7-8 as a starter, while the Bengals finished that year with an 8-8 record and in 4th place in the AFC Central. The Bengals were eliminated from the playoffs in Week 16 in a Christmas night loss against the Minnesota Vikings 29-21, and were actually the only AFC Central team to miss out on the playoffs. The 1989 season was also pretty rough for Esiason, as his teammates dealt with injuries, and head coach Sam Wyche clashed with officials and opposing fan bases during key games. After 1989, Esiason's stats continued to decline, which resulted in him getting traded traded to the New York Jets in 1993. He would go on to have a brief stint with the Arizona Cardinals in 1996, and then one last little gig with the Bengals in 1997 before retiring after that season. Joe Theismann. After helping Washington to win Super Bowl 17, Theismann had a spectacular 1983 season, completing 276 passes for 3,714 yards, a career high, and throwing a career high 29 touchdowns against 11 interceptions. Theismann also led Washington to Super Bowl 18, where they were blown out by the Los Angeles Raiders 38-9. When the 1984 season kicked off, Theismann saw some regression in his performance as he completed 283 passes for 3,391 yards and threw 24 touchdowns against 13 interceptions. Washington finished the year with an 11-5 record and made the playoffs, but they were knocked out of the divisional round of the playoffs by the Chicago Bears 23-19. In 1985, Theismann played okay, but his season and playing career came to an end when he was brutally sacked by Lawrence Taylor, resulting in a severe leg injury. Washington finished the year with a 10-6 record, but failed to qualify for the playoffs. Theismann would retire from playing in 1986 and move on to a broadcasting career. Adrian Peterson. Peterson was explosive and exciting to watch during his prime years with the Minnesota Vikings. However, his 2012 season was spectacular as he rushed for 2,097 yards, which was a career high and the most in the league, on 348 attempts, scoring 12 rushing touchdowns, catching 40 receptions for 217 yards, and scoring a receiving touchdown. As a result, Peterson won the 2012 AP NFL MVP award for his incredible season. Even though the Vikings finished the year with a 10-6 record and were knocked out of the playoffs in a 24-10 loss against the Green Bay Packers in the wildcard round. However, Peterson's 2013 season wasn't as good as his 2012 season, as he rushed for 1,266 yards on 279 attempts, scoring 10 rushing touchdowns, catching 29 receptions for 171 yards, and scoring a receiving touchdown. Peterson struggled with ball control, fumbling the ball 5 times and losing 3 fumbles throughout the year. The Vikings would finish the 2013 season with an abysmal 5-10-1 record and missing out on the playoffs altogether. Peterson also dealt with a personal tragedy off the field, as his 2-year-old son, Tyrese Robert Ruffin, died from injuries that he sustained at the hands of his mother's boyfriend, Joseph Patterson, who is still currently serving a life sentence for his crime. Peterson would bounce back in the 2015 season with 1,485 rushing yards on 327 attempts and scored 11 touchdowns, which led the league at the time. Peterson most likely will be enshrined in the Pro Football Hall of Fame for all the accomplishments on the field. But what other MVP winners ended up flopping the very next year? Were there any notable examples that we may have missed? Let us know in the comment section below. If you liked this video and learned a thing or two, then hey, clicking the like button helps us out a ton. And you know, we really appreciate it. If this is your first time coming around to TPS though, then subscribing is a great idea, because we put out videos like this every single day. But as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.